I put out a series of videos already that cover a lot of different facets and points, mistakes we've made, kind of ball python 101 through the graduate 401 level course on how to just breed your ball pythons. But I thought that it would be a good idea to have just one video, this one, where I just really discuss the 5 mistakes that new ball python breeders can make and some very easy fixes. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and thank you so much for tuning in again. If you're a new watcher or a subscriber, hey, thank you. And if you're a continued watcher, hey, man, I really appreciate all the feedback and just being able to help people, and more importantly, getting some comments that actually help me, because you got to remember, this is a two-way street. I'm just not giving information, but I'm receiving it too. And because this is YouTube, I always feel like YouTube videos should be how-to videos or improvement videos or just open your eyes videos. So one thing I don't want to do is create content that is basically saying, hey, buy my snake. I think that's wrong. Inevitably, that's just my thoughts. Everybody do what you want to do. But it seems like YouTube content, when it comes to reptiles, goes into 2 different formats. It's either, hey, buy my snake, or let me show you what I can do, or it is, hey, let me help you. And that's the route that we want to take here at Spheric Reptiles. Is I only am making this content to help you as a new ball python breeder be successful. Now, whether you choose to breed ball pythons or not, that's totally up to you, but that's not a choice that I'm here to make. Just like the kid that shows me how to reset my G-Shock watch every year. But when I tune in to how to reset my G-Shock watch, within 1 minute, I know how to do it, and I'm on to the next daylight saving times or whatever, right? So, but anyway, this video, this one, will cover just a summary of the 5 things that I think are mistakes that new ball python breeders make, including ourselves, that could destroy you, and some very easy quick fixes. And in it, I will basically tell you with each different thing, some questions that are being asked around this one segment, a course of action to take, and also just a little bit of like reminder so that you can actually just remember what is being discussed, so you can stay focused when you're breeding or you're thinking about breeding your ball pythons. So breeding stock, I think that's the most important thing. Like, once you decide on what you want to make, establishing your breeding stock is the most important. So the number 1 questions that I get, or the top questions that I get, are, do I buy visuals or heads? That's like the number 1. 2, how do I determine a healthy animal? 3, how do I determine a healthy breeder versus someone that's trying to scam me? Because that's out there too. 4 is, what morphs should I start with when you're thinking about the pattern morphs that you want to work? Because that's an important question. But I think that is one that, if you already know what projects that you're working, then that kind of helps. But when you're establishing your breeding stock, this is an important question. And this is one that we get a lot, guys. I mean, it is a lot. And lastly, when people are determining this, one of the questions that we get is, what morphs sell the best? And that's like a shotgun loaded question, right? Because it could be what morphs sell the best to breeders. It could be what morphs sell best as pets. Or is it what morphs will you be able to sell the best? So I think that is a little bit different, but let me just summarize all this, because these are real questions. So when it comes to how do you determine a healthy snake? Well, that takes research, and you got to look at a lot of snakes. You got to look at a lot of healthy snakes. So when you go to your reptile expos, I think those are the best ways. Go from breeder to breeder and have them explain to you what a healthy snake looks like. But more importantly, it should be clear eyes, mouth free of discharge, a healthy, firm body. You should be able to look at the cloaca and not see any issues. The snake should not look emaciated. The colors should be bright, unless it's in shed, right? And you should know from the age of how big it is. And I think that's where the one that you should do the research. When it comes to breeders, and whether it's you're getting a healthy snake or someone scamming you, just ask around. So if you ask around and you find that a breeder is notorious for selling snakes that are misidentified for their morphs or sex, or if they are notorious for selling snakes that have mites, or if they're notorious for selling unhealthy animals that perish. That's definitely a red sign, and I wouldn't want to give my money for that. I wouldn't want to buy anything from that person, so that's something to ask. And when it comes to visuals and hets and what morph should you buy, man, that really depends on how much you're willing to invest in the project, I think. So if you're able to buy everything that you need off the bat and make 100% hets, and that gets you ahead, then definitely do that. But if you don't have the means to do that, then you're going to have to buy maybe a visual here or a double head here and pair it up with the normal, and then you can genetic test it. But either way, there really is no shortcut other than just paying for your way forward. I hate to say that. I can't afford to just pay my way forward, but when I'm breeding my ball pythons, I really don't want to rush anyway. I like having to put the pairs together and do things like that, because I feel like that's what this is all about for me, and it might be something different for you, but these are some quick answers to the top 5 questions around what morph should I buy. So the core issue that I see when we're talking about buying your breeding stock is don't be emotional when you buy. So don't buy based on the color, and don't buy based on the cheapest snake or the price. I think that a lot of people fall into this, and it doesn't have to be a low price. It can be a high price too. Like you can think that, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of money on a snake and I'm going to get a huge return. But that's where the research comes in. And, I just really challenge you to do your research, but don't be emotional about this, because the time that you invest and the money that you invest to get what you want should be something that is well thought out. So here's some solutions, some very quick solutions. I'm going to really try to speed this up so that you can break this down, but of course it'll be broken into chapters, this one especially, so that you can go to the part that you feel like you need the most. So the number one thing that you should do as a solution is start with the end in mind and then reverse engineer it. So if you want to make Desert Hypo clowns, let's use that as an example, then you want to start with that image of a Desert Hypo clown first. And then you want to work that backwards to see where can you add your pieces in when you're buying your breeding stock. So you might be able to get a Desert Hypo male and a clown female and breed that, or you might be able to get a triple het Desert Hypo clown male and the same for a female. But there's a lot of different ways that you reverse engineer, but I would encourage you to reverse engineer, so work it backwards until you can get to like, all right, so at the very least, what would I need? And then, so you're thinking about the end, and then you're thinking about the start. But start with it's crazy to even think like this. Start with the end in mind of what you want to make, and then try to figure out what pieces of the puzzle you need to get there, right? So I think that is a very good solution that would help a lot of people when it comes to buying your breeding stock, but it's not the only one. As I said in the other videos, you want to buy your males for power. So this is where you're going to be thinking about adding all of your genes, because typically males are less expensive, and you want to buy your females as your foundation because they are the ones that give you the longevity in your breeding projects. If you buy the right female, then you won't have to replace that female, because it takes 2 years, remember, to get her up to sexual maturity at least, and then 1,500 grams before she lays and all this other stuff. So you can actually choose in your reverse engineering what females that you want, and then when it comes time to buy your males, then you'll probably be able to get a better deal on your males, even at a double visual or a double visual with the het, than you would with that same female. That's just the way that it works. The males are less expensive, but you got to remember that the males are your powerhouse and your females are your foundation. Now, you can't have success without either one when it comes to deciding on buying your breeding projects. So, that's kind of the way it works, guys. I mean, I think I've said that in other videos, but here I really wanted to stress that power with that male and that foundation with that female. So number 3, and I think that this is important because we've all bought snakes, whether, like I'll use a spider as an example, that when the spider first came out, or the caramel, that when it first came out, and then we found some things out about these animals. But if you have these animals, they're great animals. I'm not saying that, but try not to buy animals that are oversaturated in the market and that have issues, whether they're neurological or they are structural. Because when you're talking about breeding animals, the number one thing that we should always be doing is breeding animals that are healthy examples of the species, right? We really don't want to breed animals that aren't seen as healthy to the species. And, that leads me to the next thing. I'm not saying everybody has to do this, man. I'm not. But whenever I go to buy an animal, I want to know its feeding schedule, its weight schedule, when it was born, so that I can see if this animal has a good track record of success, so that can be transferred to me, especially if I'm talking about my breeding stock. I don't want to buy a male that has an issue eating. And even though it only has to get up to like 800 to 1,000 grams to realistically breed it, I want this male to be able to eat consistently so that it's up to me as to limiting how much this animal gains or not. And that same thing holds true for a female. So imagine if you buy a female and she's 100 grams, right? And you don't ask when it was born, you don't ask the feeding schedule, you don't ask for its weights over time. And then you get this animal and you're just wondering, scratching your head after a year why this animal is only 800 grams, right? Because that's happened to us, right? And this is definitely sharing mistakes that we found out. So I always ask for that track record for those three things, just because if my animal is 3 months old, it should be so much. If it's at a year, then my female should be around 700 to 800 grams at the least at the year time frame. Now, just a fair balance. We have hatched out some animals, which I've discussed in previous videos, that the low birth weight, depending on if that female was a strong feeder or not that we bred, that I'm still having issues there. So if you buy a snake that's a consistent feeder and it gains weight in a linear fashion, as I've discussed in other videos, then you have a greater chance of success in breeding that animal at the time frame that you're looking to breed that animal. So at 2 years, that animal should be at least 1,400 grams, 1,380 grams or something, or even over 1,500 grams. That transfers over to the hatchlings as well. So if you have an animal that's a slow gainer when it comes to weight and a slow, size increaser animal, I don't know if that even makes sense, but that all of those traits and those genes could be passed on to the offspring or the hatchlings, in which that case, when you sell the animal, it can present an issue to another one. So this goes back to the reputable breeder thing. So if a reputable breeder is there, and this happens, so if a breeder says this doesn't happen, that's a red flag altogether right there, because not every animal will be a consistent grower. Not every hatchling will be a consistent grower, but just be transparent with that buyer so that they know what they're getting, right? And I think that's the issue that I see. But when you're buying your breeding stock, you want to lean on that side for the animals that are growing faster, the animals that are feeding. Now, if you're buying it as a pet, then it matters. But as long as you know what you're getting into, I think that would help. The main takeaway from this is, like, you can buy, the way that I think about it, you can buy an animal for $5,000. And if you're thinking about selling ball pythons, you can make zero on this animal just because you thought it was $5,000 and you thought you were going to recoup it. Or you could buy a $1,000 animal and then end up selling that animal for, some level of that money. And you can end up making actually more money from a $1,000 animal. So I'm never saying buy snakes with the thought of what you can sell them for, but I want you, when you go to buy your snakes, I want you to put that serious planning in there so that you can just plan as if you're going to sell them. And so it'll make you hyper focus on every dollar that's spent so that you're not wasting money and you're not wasting time when you're trying to breed a project, right? So it's Coach out of, I think he's out of Arizona. I love his videos because one of the things that he always says is, like, he's not in a rush. So I would definitely say that should be your take, is don't be in a rush. Take your time. Make sure that you're developing your animals, that you're growing your animals right. But when it comes to buying your breeding stock, really and truly make sure that you're getting the healthiest examples so that when you start, you have a great foundation. I definitely want to know what you feel about this video. If you like this type of content, hit that like and subscribe button. But again, those comments are so important because not only do they help me, I feel like any question that's asked, like, remember when you're in school, it actually helps other people too, even though they don't know how or they don't want to ask the question. So with that, guys, hey, enjoy that time that you spend with your reptiles and cherish that time that you have with your families. Thank you.